In 1958, a home seamstress could walk into a fabric shop, hand over $3 for a Vogue pattern, add about $50 of good fabric, and walk out with a dress built from the same lines as a $600 original. $3. $600. That gap is the whole story of how 1960s women looked rich on a grocery budget. And it is what this list is about. 20 tricks women use to dress like money without having any. Wait until you hear what women were doing at the kitchen sink for a fraction of what a beauty parlor charged, because that one trick alone could pay for the rest of the outfit. Subscribe, because this list is about to make you rethink everything you thought you knew about looking put together on nothing. This is everything the throwaway closet hopes you forgot. Let us count down the 20 tricks that made a $5 dress look like it belonged in a $500 wardrobe. Number 20. The designer pattern. Copied at home. You remember the smell before you remember the dress. That dry paper smell of a Vogue or Butterick envelope torn open on the kitchen table. Tissue so thin it tore if you breathed on it wrong, folded into a shape that only made sense once you spread the whole thing out across the floor. Pattern companies bought the right to reproduce actual Paris silhouettes, and by 1963, American women were spending a record amount of money on fabric, patterns, and sewing machines to make their own version of what the magazines were selling that season. Your mother pinned that tissue to cloth on a Saturday morning with pins held between her lips, chalk marks tracing a shape she would cut freehand by Sunday, and by the time church rolled around, she was wearing a line the fashion houses charged a fortune for, stitched by her own two hands at the kitchen table. Nobody in the pew knew the difference, and nobody was meant to. What replaced it was clothing nobody constructs anymore, only buys and discards. A closet full of things no one in the house could name the making of. Number 19. The pillbox hat. Made of felt from the 5 and dime. When Jacqueline Kennedy stepped out at her husband's inauguration in January of 1961, wearing a small dented hat, the dent itself, the accident of a windy day, milliners across the country could not keep pillboxes in stock fast enough, and a magazine writer said plainly that the look was elegant and expensive, from pillbox to pumps, and could be inexpensively copied by anyone willing to try. Down at the 5 and dime, a plain felt cone in the right shade, angled just so, and pinned to a bouffant set the night before, did the same visual job as the silk original that cost a small fortune uptown. A woman who could never afford the real thing still owned the exact shape of the moment, in felt instead of silk, walking into church on a Sunday morning feeling like the whole country was watching the same silhouette she was wearing. What replaced it was the bare head. Hats gone from ordinary daily life almost entirely by the decade's end. Number 18. The white glove wardrobe. You slipped them on the way you slipped on your shoes without thinking twice, because a woman who left the house barehanded in 1960 felt half-dressed, no matter what else she had on. A single good pair of short white cotton gloves matched almost anything in a closet, hid a chapped or work-worn hand from anyone shaking it, and turned a perfectly plain dress formal the instant you pulled them on at the door. You kept them on to pay the cashier, kept them on to shake a hand at church, and only worked them off, finger by finger, once you sat down to eat. What replaced it was nothing at all on the hands, the whole ritual pushed into a junk drawer and forgotten by the late 60s. Number 17. Buying stockings 2 boxes at a time. At the hosiery counter, you learned your size, your proportion, your denier, seam or no seam, reinforced heel or plain. standing in front of rows of shallow boxes that all looked nearly identical until the clerk explained the difference. You bought more than one identical pair on purpose, because the moment you were down to a single stocking with no match left in the drawer, that last stocking might as well be thrown away, since finding the exact same shade and knit again was never guaranteed. 2 boxes bought together meant insurance against the day one leg gave out before the other. What replaced it was pantyhose, and eventually, nothing on the legs at all. Number 16. The drop of clear nail polish on a run. You remember the small panic of feeling a seam let go halfway up your calf on your way out the door, the cold thread of air where the nylon had opened, and the quick fix that every woman knew: a dab of clear polish pressed right at the top and bottom of the run to freeze it in place before it could climb any further before church. It was not a permanent solution, and everyone knew it, but it bought you an hour, sometimes a whole afternoon, long enough to get through the service and back home. What replaced it was simply buying a new pair on the way to wherever you were going, because pairs eventually got cheap enough to treat as disposable. Number 15, saving green stamps toward the wardrobe budget. You remember licking the back of a small green stamp and pressing it into a booklet at the kitchen table. The sour taste of the glue on your tongue, the satisfaction of watching a page fill up 50 points at a time until the whole book was done. By the 1960s, nearly 80% of American households were collecting Sperry and Hutchinson's green stamps at the grocery store and the gas station, trading full books for items out of a catalog thick as a phone book. A full booklet traded in for something the house needed: a set of towels, a mixer, a picnic basket, meant a few real dollars freed up out of that week's budget for a coat instead. What replaced it was the invisible cashback app on a phone, no licking required, and no one able to tell you their running total. Number 14. The home permanent at the kitchen sink. The company that made the most famous kit built its whole campaign on a simple dare, printing pictures of identical twins side by side and asking readers to guess which one had paid a small fortune for a salon wave and which one had done it herself at home for a fraction of that price, the joke being that nobody could ever tell. Grandma's kitchen turned into a beauty parlor for an afternoon, a towel pinned around your shoulders, the sharp ammonia smell filling the room, small plastic curlers biting into your scalp while you sat as still as you could stand. What replaced it was a standing weekly salon appointment nobody blinks at paying for. The kitchen sink retired from beauty work entirely. Number 13. Costume jewelry built to fool a stranger at 10 paces. Trifari's head designer spent decades perfecting rhinestones and faux pearls, so convincing, with an iridescent finish borrowed from real oyster shell, that a woman could pin one on and no one across the room would know it from Cartier or Van Cleef. And even Mamie Eisenhower reportedly wore a faux pearl set to a presidential inauguration without anyone thinking less of the choice. The company was so proud of its own craftsmanship that it advertised a simple boast that if a piece was not signed, it was not really theirs. A brooch on the collar of a plain wool suit did the same work a real gemstone would have done for a fraction of what the real one would have cost. What replaced it is jewelry nobody expects to survive the season it was bought in, meant to be worn a handful of times and forgotten in a drawer. Let us pause here for a second. Picture her again at that kitchen table, pins held between her lips, tissue paper spread out flat under the overhead light, a cup of coffee gone cold beside the sewing machine, getting herself and her daughters ready to be seen by the whole world on almost nothing at all. She did not have the money. She had the method. Number 12. turning a worn collar. When the collar of a good blouse frayed white along the fold from years of ironing and washing, you did not throw the blouse away. You picked out the stitches with the point of a seam ripper, lifted the whole collar free, flipped it over so the worn side now faced inward against the neck, and sewed it back on, looking crisp and new from the outside, the wear hidden where no one would ever see it again. It was a skill taught in home economics classrooms as plainly as arithmetic or spelling, passed down from a mother's hands to a daughter's without anyone calling it a lesson. What replaced it was simply discarding the shirt the moment the collar showed its age. Number 11. The cardigan twin set. One good wool skirt paired with 3 or 4 different sweaters, a plain shell for weekdays, and a matching cardigan thrown over it for church meant a week of outfits that never quite repeated the same way twice, even though the pieces themselves were few. It was arithmetic dressed up as style, a small wardrobe multiplied by clever mixing instead of by spending. What replaced it was a closet stuffed with single-use outfits, each one worn once for a photograph and then rarely touched again. Number 10. The crisply pressed dress. You remember the hiss of the iron meeting a damp cloth and the smell of steam rising off a warm cotton, the particular ache that settled into your forearm from pressing a full skirt flat, pleat by pleat, before church on a Sunday morning. A pressed dress announced that someone had taken the time to care for it, no matter what the dress itself had originally cost, and a wrinkled hem read as neglect even on an expensive fabric. What replaced it was wrinkle release spray and clothes engineered never to need an iron at all, the whole ritual of pressing quietly disappearing from most households. Number 9. The foundation garment underneath. Beneath the visible dress sat the quiet architecture nobody saw, boning and elastic doing the work of smoothing a line so that a $5 dress hung exactly the way the pattern envelope promised it would. It took discipline to wear and a certain private discomfort nobody complained about out loud, but the payoff showed up the moment you looked in a mirror before leaving the house. Nobody at church ever saw it, and everybody saw its effect. What replaced it is shapewear worn as its own visible layer under sheer fabric, or abandoned altogether in favor of comfort over line. Number 8. Hand-me-downs, recut. A dress did not end its life the day the oldest daughter outgrew it. A hem came down an inch, a waist was taken in at the side seam, a collar was retrimmed with a scrap of new ribbon, and the same fabric started a second childhood on a younger sister who never knew or minded the difference. It was thrift, dressed up as love, since a well-made, carefully altered child's dress was understood in the neighborhood as proof a mother had made time for her family even while stretched thin. What replaced it was buying something new for every child, every season, the old dress given away or thrown out still perfectly good. Number 7. Home economics class. You remember the hum of a dozen sewing machines running at once in a school classroom, the teacher moving row to row correcting a seam or straightening a hem, the whole subject taught as plainly as arithmetic or spelling, and expected of every girl in the room. A whole generation left school already knowing how to alter a waistband, mend a tear, or construct a simple dress from a pattern without ever paying a professional to do it for them. What replaced it was that class quietly dropped from most school schedules over the following decades, the skill no longer assumed of anyone. Number 6. The layaway coat. You remember picking out a good winter coat in October, the store clerk writing your name on a tag and pinning it to the collar before hanging it safely in a back room, and paying it down a little at a time, a few dollars each week, until it was fully yours, by the time the first snow came in December. There was no interest charged and no debt carried, just patience turned slowly into ownership. The coat waiting for you the whole time, untouched by anyone else. What replaced it was the credit card and the instant purchase, the coat in your hands the same afternoon, and the pleasure of choosing it gone before you even got it home. Number 5. The scarf. Folded a dozen different ways. One square of silk or cotton could sit tied over your hair against the wind on a walk to the bus stop, knot loosely at your throat, under a plain collar for church, or tie to the handle of a handbag for a spot of color. One piece of fabric doing the work of 3 separate accessories, depending only on how you folded it that morning. What replaced it is the single-use accessory, bought to match one specific outfit and rarely worn with anything else again. Number 4. The handbag matched to the shoes. There was a small, exacting discipline in making sure your leather agreed with itself from head to toe, navy bag with navy pumps, never a shade off. The kind of detail nobody complimented out loud because it was simply expected, and its absence would have been the thing people noticed instead. The snap of a clasp closing said everything had already been considered before you left the house. What replaced it is the mismatched everyday tote, convenience quietly winning out over the deliberate match. Number 3. Shoes dyed to match a special dress. Rather than buy a new pair of shoes for every occasion, you carried last year's plain pumps to the shoe repair counter and had the leather dyed to match whatever new dress you were wearing next. One good pair of shoes living several different lives in several different colors over the years, instead of sitting in a closet after a single wearing. What replaced it was simply buying new shoes for every event and letting the old pair go, still perfectly wearable, still sound at the sole. Number 2. Pin curls set the night before. You remember the discomfort of sleeping on hard plastic rollers, or on rags twisted and knotted section by section against your scalp, tossing carefully all night so as not to flatten a single curl, waking with a mild headache and a salon-quality set you never once paid a salon for. It took patience and a genuinely poor night's sleep, but it held all the way through the church service and the family dinner that came after, without a single pin showing. What replaced it was the flat iron and the blow dryer, fast heat applied in the morning instead of overnight patience given up the night before. Number 1. The Sears catalog, worn soft at the corners. You remember the smell of cheap newsprint and the particular softness the pages took on after being turned so many times by so many hands. An entire year's wardrobe planned out on a kitchen table months before a single dollar was actually spent. Pages folded down at the corner to mark a coat or a pair of shoes to come back to later. It was ordinary. In nearly every American house by the 1960s, the mail-order fashion plan for families who might never once see the inside of a department store in the nearest city. What replaced it is the bottomless online scroll, infinite and forgettable. Nothing left soft at the corners, because nothing is ever held long enough to wear the paper down. Here is what actually got lost. And it was not the fabric. And it was not the money. It was the knowing how. It was a mother's hands moving without looking, correcting a hem by feel, matching a seam without a pattern to guide her because she had done it so many times before. Nobody handed these women a big budget. Nobody handed them easy choices either. What they had instead was a method, built up slowly, taught mother to daughter at a kitchen table, practiced until it looked effortless from across the room. A dyed pair of shoes was not a lie, A turned collar was not a trick played on the neighbors. It was the plain fact that a woman could look at very little and make it into something worth looking at, and she rarely got credit for the skill it took. We traded that method away, quietly, without much of a ceremony, for the convenience of simply buying whatever was on the rack. Nobody announced the trade. It just happened. One Sears catalog at a time, one flat iron at a time, until an entire vocabulary of small daily craft went quiet in most households. She did not have the money. She had the method. And the method is the thing this list has really been trying to hand back to you. If you remember any of this, you are not foolish for missing it. Your mother or your grandmother was not poor in any way that mattered when she pinned that pattern to the cloth, or dyed those shoes to match a new dress. She was resourceful in a way an entire culture used to respect out loud, and that respect is worth remembering even now, even here, even if all you have left of it is a photograph and a story someone told you once at a kitchen table of your own. The world she got dressed in every morning was real, and it was good, and it deserved every bit of care she gave it. So tell me down in the comments, what is the trick your mother or your grandmother swore by? The one that made you look twice as put together as your allowance should have ever allowed? I would love to hear it.